It was a quiet morning at LAX airport, the kind of morning where everyone's rushing, eyes on their phones, hearts half awake. Through the crowd walked a man in a faded black hoodie, worn jeans, and a simple backpack slung over his shoulder. No bodyguards, no sunglasses, no noise. Just calm footsteps. No one noticed him, and that was exactly how he liked it. He moved slowly toward gate 27, waiting in line like everyone else. The woman at the counter barely glanced up when she said, "Passport, please." He smiled, polite, humble. But she didn't smile back. Her eyes moved from his shoes to his old backpack. Then with a slight frown, she asked, "Sir, are you sure you're at the right gate? This flight's business class only." The man chuckled softly, not offended. "Yes, I'm sure," he replied quietly. But she sighed, shaking her head. "Sir, these tickets are expensive. Maybe check with economy, just in case." People in line began to turn, curious. A few whispered, trying to see what was going on. But he didn't react. No anger, no ego, just quiet patience. She took his ticket with visible annoyance and scanned it. A green light flashed. Her face froze. It was a priority boarding pass, first class. Still, she didn't apologize. Instead, she forced a fake smile and said, "You can board now." He nodded gently, whispering, "Thank you," and walked toward the jet bridge. As he passed, another employee muttered under her breath, "Some people really dress like they don't belong here." He heard it. Everyone nearby did, but the man didn't stop. He simply adjusted his backpack, smiled at a little girl holding a teddy bear, and kept walking. No one knew that the man they had just insulted was Keanu Reeves, and in a few minutes, the same airline staff who dismissed him would be left speechless because what he was about to do inside that plane would become one of the most talked about acts of humility and celebrity history. They thought they were dealing with just another passenger, but he was about to teach them a lesson they'd never forget. Inside the plane, the air felt heavy with chatter and impatience. The flight attendants moved briskly, trying to organize the crowd of passengers finding their seats. Keanu walked down the aisle quietly, glancing at seat numbers. A few passengers recognized him, one nudged the other, whispering, "That's him. That's Keanu Reeves." But most people didn't notice. He looked too ordinary to draw attention. He reached his assigned seat, a comfortable first-class window seat. But just a few rows behind him, a young couple stood helplessly with their little daughter no older than 5. The child's seat was separated from theirs due to a booking error. The mother tried explaining to a flight attendant, but the attendant replied impatiently, "Ma'am, we can't make changes now. Please take your seat so we can depart." The little girl clung to her mother, tears forming in her eyes. That's when Keanu turned. He watched for a moment, calm, thoughtful, and then stood up. He walked over to the attendant and said softly, "Excuse me. If it helps, I can switch my seat with theirs. Let the family sit together." The attendant looked at him like he'd said something ridiculous. "Sir, that's a first-class seat. You'd be moving to economy." Keanu smiled, shrugging lightly. "That's fine. It's just a few hours," she frowned. "Sir, it's against policy to swap across classes." Her tone wasn't polite, more like she was correcting him. Passengers around started watching again, whispering, sensing the tension. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't argue. He simply nodded. "All right then. I'll sit wherever you need me to." But before he could move, another attendant, younger, less tense, approached. She recognized him instantly. Her eyes widened. That's Keanu Reeves." The rude attendant froze. Her face went pale as she stammered, "Oh, I didn't—" Keanu gently interrupted. "It's okay. Let's just make sure they sit together, yeah?" The mother tried to refuse, embarrassed. "Sir, you don't have to—" But Keanu smiled warmly. "It's no trouble. Family comes first." And with that, he quietly moved to an economy seat at the back. No fuss, no attention, just peace. Whispers spread across the cabin like a ripple. Phones subtly came out. People stared, not because of who he was, but what he just did. The little girl waved at him shyly from her seat in first class. Keanu waved back, grinning softly, but not everyone was impressed. The first attendant, still embarrassed, whispered to a colleague, "Celebrities think they can just do whatever they want." She didn't realize that her words were being heard, again, By him, he didn't react. He just leaned back in his small seat, quietly watching the aisle, the light from the window brushing across his calm face. He wasn't angry. He wasn't trying to prove anything. He was just being himself, a man who believed kindness should never need an audience. Little did they know. This small act was only the beginning, because before this flight would land, the entire airline, from crew to captain, would learn who they had tried to put in his place. And this time, there would be no denying him. The plane was finally in the air. A soft hum filled the cabin, engines steady, passengers settling in. But for one man sitting quietly in the back, the flight was about to become much more than a journey from one city to another. Keanu sat by the window, knees pressed against the seat ahead of him. His frame, tall and calm, looked almost out of place in the cramped economy row. He wasn't scrolling through his phone, wasn't complaining, just gazing out at the clouds like they held some old memory. A young boy next to him whispered to his mother, "Mom, I think that's John Wick." His mother smiled softly. "Maybe, sweetheart. But let's not disturb him." Keanu overheard and smiled kindly, giving the boy a small nod. The boy grinned, eyes wide. His quiet hero was sitting right beside him. Meanwhile, at the front, the same attendant from earlier, Ashley, was still fuming. Her pride was bruised. She hadn't liked being corrected, especially not in front of passengers. She whispered to her colleague, "He's sitting in the wrong section. I don't care who he is." Her voice carried that sharp tone, the kind that drips with resentment. The colleague tried to calm her. "Ashley, just let it go." But she didn't. Instead, she grabbed a notepad and marched down the aisle. Passengers turned as she stopped beside Keanu's seat. "Sir," she said firmly, "you need to return to your assigned seat. This isn't allowed." He looked up, surprised but calm. "I already cleared it with your colleague. It was for the family with the child." Ashley crossed her arms. "That's not procedure, sir. Please don't make this difficult." The boy beside him looked frightened. People nearby started whispering again. Phones angled discreetly, recording. Keanu stayed quiet for a moment, then said softly, "I didn't mean to cause trouble. I was just trying to help." Ashley's tone hardened. "Well, next time let the staff handle it." She glanced at his clothes again, the same quiet judgment in her eyes. Then, loud enough for others to hear, she muttered, "Some passengers think kindness means bending rules." The cabin went silent. Everyone could feel the sting of her words. Keanu slowly stood up. He wasn't angry, but his silence had weight. He gently said, "You're right. Rules matter. But so does respect." Ashley hesitated. Her expression flickered, a brief moment of uncertainty. But her pride pushed back. "Sir, please take your seat before I call the supervisor." The passengers stared. One man whispered, "Why is she talking to him like that?" Another said quietly, "That's Keanu Reeves, right? What's wrong with her?" Ashley turned pale, realizing too late that people were filming. But Keanu, instead of using his fame, simply nodded. He smiled faintly, eyes gentle, and said, "You're doing your job. I understand." Then he sat down again. The tension lingered in the air like static. The mother from the first-class section came forward quietly, tears in her eyes. "Sir, please, we didn't mean to cause this," she whispered. He shook his head lightly. "No worries. Your daughter's happy, that's all that matters." The woman smiled, emotional. You're a good man." He gave a small nod, gaze returning to the clouds. And then something unexpected happened. The little girl he'd given up his seat for walked down the aisle with a drawing in her tiny hands. A crayon picture of him smiling with a plane in the background. She handed it to him shyly. "Thank you, mister." The whole cabin melted into silence, and a silence of respect. Even Ashley looked away, suddenly unsure. Keanu took the drawing gently, smiling. "Thank you," he said softly. "That's beautiful." And as the plane continued through the clouds, the moment felt almost sacred. Because in a world where ego usually speaks loudest, one man's silence was speaking louder. But fate wasn't done. This flight still had one more turn to take. A moment that would leave even the captain stunned, and teach everyone on board what true class really means. The flight had been in the air for less than an hour when the captain's voice echoed over the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, due to a minor technical issue, we'll be making an unscheduled stop. Please remain calm and seated. We appreciate your patience." A soft murmur spread through the cabin. Passengers sighed, groaned, checked their watches. Everyone knew what a minor delay really meant. Hours of waiting, chaos and frustration. Ashley, the attendant, exhaled loudly. "Perfect," she muttered sarcastically. "Just what we needed." Her tone dripped with annoyance as she passed by Keanu's row again, refusing to look him in the eye. He, however, didn't seem bothered. He simply leaned back, eyes closed, hands resting gently on his knees. The picture of calm. A few minutes later, the plane landed at a small regional airport for safety inspection. The doors stayed closed, engines off. The air conditioning began to fade, and so did everyone's patience. Children cried, people complained, tempers rose. The attendant struggled to keep order, except for Ashley, who was pacing irritably, muttering about ungrateful passengers. And then, quietly, Keanu stood up. He took a deep breath, looked around, and without saying a word to the crew, started helping. He lifted a suitcase from an overhead bin for an elderly woman. He handed a bottle of water to a mother trying to calm her baby. He even offered his own snack bar to a teenage boy who hadn't eaten all day. No camera crew. No manager. Just him, a man quietly being human. Passengers began to notice. A woman whispered to her husband, "Isn't that—" The husband squinted, then nodded slowly. "Yes, that's him." The whisper turned into a wave, a ripple of recognition spreading seat by seat. "That's Keanu Reeves." "No way, why is he back here?" He gave up his seat for that family. Phones began to record Keanu, but not out of curiosity. Out of disbelief. People couldn't believe someone so famous was sitting among them, helping, smiling, sweating like everyone else, and not once complaining. A small child approached him shyly. "Mister, are you really John Wick?" Keanu chuckled, lowering himself to the child's height. "Sometimes," he said softly. But not today, the cabin filled with quiet laughter. Even those who'd been irritated moments ago began to smile. Ashley, still unaware of what was unfolding, approached him again, irritated. "Sir, please sit down. You're not authorized to move around during delay." Keanu turned calmly. "I'm just helping people stay calm." Everyone's anxious, her frustration boiled over. "You're making my job harder, sir. Please take your seat." And then it happened. The captain stepped out of the cockpit. He had a printout in his hand, eyes scanning the cabin, until they landed on Keanu. His expression changed instantly. "Wait, Mr. Reeves?" The cabin fell silent. Ashley froze mid-sentence. The captain's voice, now softer, carried across the room. "Sir, it's an honor. We didn't realize you were on board. If you'd like, we can arrange for you to wait in the lounge once we land again." Keanu smiled, shaking his head. "Thank you, Captain, but I'll stay with everyone. We're all in this together, right?" The captain smiled, nodding in respect. "Of course, sir." Every passenger stared in awe, not at the celebrity but at the humility. The same man who could have demanded silence, comfort, and privilege was instead offering comfort to others. Ashley's face turned pale. Her confidence shattered as passengers began whispering, not cruelly but with judgment she could feel in her bones. She yelled at him, "Can you believe that?" And he never even raised his voice. Keanu noticed her discomfort. He walked up to her gently and said, "Hey, no hard feelings. We all have bad days. Let's just make it a better flight from here, okay?" She didn't know what to say. Her lips trembled as she nodded. I'm sorry, Mr. Reeves," he smiled faintly. "It's just Keanu." And with that, he went back to helping the passengers, passing out water, cracking quiet jokes, lifting luggage, comforting a crying toddler. Hours passed, but somehow no one was angry anymore. The flight had turned from chaos into calm, because of one man who didn't need fame to command respect. He simply earned it through kindness. And as the plane finally prepared to take off again, a quiet realization spread through the cabin. They hadn't just witnessed a celebrity. They had witnessed character, but the story wasn't over yet. Something far bigger was waiting, a moment that would shake the entire airline and change how they treated people forever. The engines roared back to life as the plane lifted once again into the clouds. But inside, the atmosphere had changed completely. Moments ago, this cabin had been filled with frustration, judgment, and noise. Now there was quiet respect, the kind of silence that follows a revelation. Passengers who had once whispered and doubted now watched Keanu Reeves in quiet admiration. Some still couldn't believe it. The man sitting barefoot in economy, helping strangers, was the same man who'd fought assassins on screen and donated millions off it. But to him, this wasn't a revelation. It was just another moment to do what was right. A few minutes later, Ashley, the attendant who'd mocked him, stood near the curtain separating business and economy. Her heart pounded. Every time she saw him helping someone, every time she heard another passenger thank him, she felt the weight of her own arrogance. She'd spent the flight thinking she was in control, that her authority, her uniform, gave her power. But now, watching this quiet man in worn jeans, she realized power didn't come from status. It came from grace. Finally, she took a deep breath and walked toward him. "Mr. Reeves," she said softly. Her voice trembled. The passengers nearby turned, watching. Keanu looked up, the same calm smile on his face. "Yes, I wanted to apologize," she stammered. "I didn't know who you were. I shouldn't have spoken to you that way." He shook his head gently. "You don't need to apologize for not recognizing me. That's not what mattered." Her eyes filled with tears. "Then what does?" He looked at her kindly, his voice steady, almost fatherly. "Respect, kindness. Those don't change, and no matter who's sitting in the seat." Ashley lowered her eyes. "You're right," she whispered. The words hit her deeper than any reprimand ever could. At that moment, the head supervisor of the cabin arrived, a woman named Clarissa. She had just received word from the captain about who was on board, and her face showed both shock and guilt. "Mr. Reeves, I'm so deeply sorry," she began. "We had no idea," Keanu interrupted gently. "Please, and don't make it about that. I'm no different from anyone else here. Just make sure your team gets to rest after this flight. Everyone's tired." Clarissa blinked, taken aback by his humility. "You're too kind," he smiled faintly. "I try to be. The world's already full of noise. I'd rather add a little quiet kindness to it." Passengers nearby nodded. Some even clapped quietly. The energy on the plane shifted again, this time toward warmth. A few hours later, as the plane prepared for landing, Keanu stood up once more. He looked around at the tired, restless passengers, and then at the crew. He could have said nothing. He could have left quietly like always, but he chose to speak. "Hey everyone," he said softly, loud enough for the nearby rows to hear. "I just wanted to thank you all for your patience. Delays happen, life gets messy, but I saw a lot of good here today. People helping each other even when it wasn't easy." He paused, eyes moving toward Ashley and the rest of the crew. "And for those working this flight, it's not an easy job. But small kindnesses, they go a long way. You never know what someone's going through." His tone wasn't a lecture. It was almost a whisper, the kind that carries more power than shouting ever could. Passengers listened silently. Ashley wiped her eyes. Even Clarissa stood still, hand over her heart. Keanu continued, smiling gently. "I've learned that fame doesn't make you important. How you treat people does. You can wear a uniform or a suit or worn-out jeans, but dignity looks the same on everyone." The cabin was silent, not out of shock, but out of awe. A few people quietly clapped, then a few more, and within seconds the entire cabin joined in, a soft, respectful applause that filled the air. Ashley stepped forward one last time. "Mr. Reeves," she said quietly, "I don't know how to thank you for your grace." He smiled, shaking his head. "Just pass it on. That's how it spreads." When the plane finally touched down, Keanu didn't rush out first. He waited, helped a woman with her luggage, carried a sleeping child's backpack, and shook hands with the captain before stepping off the jet bridge. Behind him, Ashley watched through the narrow cabin window, watching not a celebrity, but a man who'd just changed how she viewed her job and herself. And as he disappeared into the busy terminal crowd, she whispered quietly to herself, "He didn't teach me how to serve better. He taught me how to be better." Power isn't about position. It's about patience and kindness. It's the only class that never goes out of style. The plane door opened, and the humid air of Los Angeles filled the jet bridge. Passengers began filing out one by one, some tired, some in a hurry to catch their connections. But every single one of them looked back, at least once. because what they had witnessed wasn't something you forget. Keanu Reeves, the man the world saw as an action legend, had just taught an entire plane the quiet strength of humility. A young passenger named Jacob, a travel vlogger with barely 1,000 followers, had secretly captured a few moments on his phone. Keanu giving up his seat, helping a mother with her child, and sharing those soft, profound words before landing. He didn't post them right away. He hesitated. Would it look like he was invading someone's privacy? But then he remembered Keanu's words. If kindness can spread, let it. That night he posted a short 45-second clip on his travel page, and with a simple caption, he was Keanu Reeves, and the airline tried to stop him. Big mistake. Within hours the internet caught fire. The video didn't open with action or drama. It began with a shaky shot of Keanu standing in the aisle, offering his first-class seat to an elderly couple. Then, a cut to him in economy, smiling softly, helping the woman next to him lift her bag. The voice in the video, Jacob's trembling narration, said, "This man didn't fight assassins today. He fought ego, and won." That line hit home. Within 24 hours, the video crossed 20 million views. Within a week, it was everywhere, from major news outlets to fan pages, from motivational speakers to airline staff around the world. But the most powerful reactions came from the people who were there. Ashley, the flight attendant who had first judged him, wrote a public letter. Her post read, "I was on that flight. I made a mistake, and one I'll never forget. I judged someone by his seat, not his soul. But Mr. Reeves didn't humiliate me. He taught me with grace." That post went viral too. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was real, human, raw, and full of accountability. Soon, the airline itself released a statement, not defensive, not polished, just honest. "We're grateful to Mr. Reeves for reminding us that humility and respect are what keep the world flying. No PR spin could have done what his silence had already done, turn a potential controversy into a global reflection on kindness." Weeks passed. The story became a symbol, shared in classrooms, leadership workshops, even sermons. It was no longer about a celebrity or an airline. It was about how easily we forget to see the person in front of us. Meanwhile, Keanu stayed silent. No interviews, no statements, no self-praise. Just a short post on his foundation's page. You don't need fame to make a difference. Just a heart that remembers others matter too. And that was it. Months later, Ashley, now promoted to head trainer for new attendants, began her sessions with a story. Not about rules or flight safety, but about a man who once sat in seat 23B, who showed her that service wasn't about status. It was about spirit. She would look at the new recruits and say, "If you ever forget why kindness matters, remember now you might be serving someone who could teach you what it truly means." Her voice always cracked when she said that line. As for Jacob, the young vlogger, and his life changed too. Not because of followers, but because of perspective. He started a new project called Humanity in Transit, documenting acts of kindness from around the world. The first video he uploaded after that flight was titled, "Not All Heroes Wear Suits" or some sit in economy. And somewhere in a quiet corner of a cafe in downtown Los Angeles, Keanu Reeves sat alone, hoodie pulled up, sipping his coffee, reading a worn-out paperback. A waitress recognized him but didn't say anything. When she came back, she found a $100 tip under the cup and a small note that said, "You smiled at me." That's worth more than fame, she smiled to herself. Not because of the money, but because she realized she had just been part of another quiet story no one would ever hear. As the camera would fade out in a film, so did the world fade back into its ordinary rhythm, but this time a little softer, a little kinder. Because one man's humility had reminded millions that greatness isn't in what you have, it's in what you give away. Some legends fight battles. Others fight pride. And the rarest ones remind us what humanity still looks like.